There's a quote by Maya Angelou that says, "This is a wonderful day. I've never seen this one before." That quote is a favorite of mine, but it's been on my vision board since the beginning of the year. There have been so many times in my life that I felt so uncertain, but that quote reminds me every morning that today, no matter what it holds, no matter what comes up, no matter what catches me off guard, it is brand new. There's no reruns. There's certainly no previews. And it really reminds me to choose to live each day and give each day the benefit of the doubt to make an impact. After meeting today's guest, Jodi Wellman, I also find myself asking, how often do I actually think about how many weeks of my life I have left? And what would I change if I did? That might sound morbid, but hear me out here. Have you ever heard about the 5 regrets of the dying? It's based on the work of a palliative care nurse, Bronnie Ware, who cared for hundreds of people in their final days. What she heard the most was, "I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. I wished I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had the courage to express my true feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And I wish that I had let myself be happier." Oof, I have the chills. My guest today is Jodi Wellman, and she has built her life around those kinds of questions. Jodi is the founder of 4,000 Mondays. She's a speaker, an author, and an assistant instructor in the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania. Her book, You Only Die Once: How to Make It to the End with No Regrets, made Adam Grant's summer reading list and is a Next Big Idea Club must-read. You may have seen her in the New York Times, Oprah Daily, Fast Company, Forbes, CNBC, Psychology Today, and more. And her TED Talk, How Death Can Bring You Back to Life, has over 1.3 million views and was one of the top 15 most watched TEDx talks of 2022. I'm so honored she's here today. And in this conversation, we're going to talk about why facing our mortality can actually reduce existential anxiety. Practical tips even for the busiest people, because I know we are all so busy, to stop waiting to die and start living, and what it looks like to let go of the illusion of control and find peace in the unknown. Jodi's here to remind us that time is finite, but that can be a really good thing. All right, let's hear it. Hi, Jodi. Welcome to the Real Personal Branding Podcast.
Woohoo, Lauren, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here. How are you doing, really, for real? Because this is
Really?
the Real Personal Branding Podcast.
I love it. It's like things just got deep.
Yes.
I love it. You know what? Really, I mean, if you're real, things are fantastic. And as life is always this like cocktail of lots of different things. And in the vein of even branding, I'm in the midst of this sort of pontification phase of like, how do I want to refine? How do I want to be more thoughtful about what is basically like, we're always iterating like what WTF.
Yeah.
So I'm in a little bit of that in a non-spirally way, but in like a mildly, I think I need to pour another drink kind of way. So it's all great and weird.
That's actually an exciting place to be in. So I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see what kind of comes out of that. We are going to talk about so much stuff today. We're going to talk. Well, at first I feel like I should say that I met you at a conference for speakers, and you and I were sitting around a table with others, and we were like kind of doing this group discussion question. And you piped up and you said like, "Oh, well, I actually talk about how you only die once and how you only have 4,000 Mondays in your whole life." And everyone's faces around the table were like puzzled. And I was like, oh my gosh, tell me more. Like, I can't wait to hear more about this. Because I love that kind of stuff. And I love talking about this stuff. So I'm really excited for this conversation. But it was so nice to meet you there. And you and I won't say what conference it is, but like you and I kind of talked at that conference a little bit. And we were on the same page about like how it's so refreshing to have real conversations when you meet somebody that you're like, I can actually connect with them on a deeper level than just surface level. So I really appreciate the talks we had at that conference and the short time that I got to know you there.
And so I just want to say thank you for that.
Well, right back at you, ditto, because it was one of those, you're like a grounding, like, not just person, but whole entire aura. Like it was nice to be able to just be like, okay, well, you can just be real. Like, what do you really think? And not in a, angry catty way about the event or anything.
No,
it was just like, what's happening? How do you feel? How's this working for you or not? And so, yeah. And I knew immediately, we made eye contact after I talked about 4,000 Mondays, and I was like, she's a kindred spirit.
Yes. I love that. Yes. No. And I truly felt the same way. I felt like I had a lot of very surface level conversations there. And the minute I heard someone talking about something real, I was like, okay, I got to dig in. Like, I hope we get a chance to talk again. And then we did. Then we sat for an hour outside one of the sessions and chatted for like what felt like an afternoon. So I'm really happy that chance meeting happened. And I can't wait to dive into your story. So we just threw a lot at you about maybe some things that Jodi talks about, but actually where Jodi kind of started her career and her professional life was in corporate leadership and like this corporate career, and kind of shifted into the space that you're in now. So why don't you give us a little bit of your background story, like where you were at, how you kind of shifted into this space now. Just give us a little context for who you are and what you bring to the table now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to. And it's funny, as you're asking this, I'm aware of thinking about, if I was listening to our conversation, my tale of making changes in my career might be resonant with people, or even just encouraging, like, oh, right, I can make changes. Cause this to me is part of like, how do we want to spend our time? Let's not feel stuck. So speaking of stuck, I did work for 17 years in executive roles, and it was great until I got kind of bored. And then I felt stuck. I didn't know what to do and how to get out of it. And I was probably caught by the trappings of, some success, right? Like, well, my ego likes that I know what I'm doing here. The money's good. The parking space is good. The stuff, and I mostly just afraid of what was on the other side, even though I knew it was going to be better. Yeah. So at any rate, by the way, I just have this silly story about, I remember distinctly being in my office. I was stapling pages together and my stapler ran out. Okay, no big deal. I go to the office supply closet and, on the 4th floor, and I go and I get a new roll of staples and I load up my stapler. And I distinctly said to myself, as I snapped the stapler shut, I said, I am not going to be here by the time I go through this row of staples. Oh, I just and that's like 200 staples. Okay, so here I am. And I go back to my office. For some reason, I felt this like bizarre sense of like staple infused optimism. And I go back to my office and I do diddly squat about finding a new job. I just go do my job. And then a year later, I run out of freaking staples because, and I felt so sad about myself, so ashamed. So all the gross feelings of like, like I was waiting for something magical to happen to me to pluck me out of it. So I'll fast forward. Yes, my stapler ran out a couple more times, and I ended up working with a coach, and I shifted into getting into leadership development and coaching. So I started my own business. That was my first foray into my own thing, my own branding. Who am I? What voice am I supposed to use? And I learned the hard way about, trying to be someone I wasn't. But yet it was a great 10 years. And all that time, though, I have been, I was going to say, that's pun intended, I guess, dying to talk about death. How it can be a motivator. This topic of memento mori, which means remember we must die. So I finally did this thing. Well, I went to grad school for positive psychology at University of Pennsylvania. I made it my thesis, and I just got the confidence that I felt I needed in order to say, this is now what I want to be doing. I need and want to be able to speak from stages and write about this and encourage us to wake the F up, because unfortunately life's limited. And so 4,000 Mondays was born. And it's been the sort of flame in my furnace now for 4 years, almost 5. And I'm excited to say that like reinvention's possible if you just summon up the courage and staple a lot of pages together.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the concept of 4,000 Mondays. Yeah. Where did that concept come from? Like, tell us a little bit more about 4,000 Mondays and what that actually means, and how does it influence the way that you help people approach life?
Yeah. Well, roughly 4,000 weeks is all we get to live on average. Wow. And Mondays are always visceral. So I wasn't going to pick 4,000 Saturdays because life's great, no matter how you slice nice Saturdays. So Mondays was like, it's a litmus. Like, am I waking up on a Monday interested in what I'm doing? Am I dreading it? Am I just neutral? And is that okay for me? So by measuring how much time we have in total, and then what I do in any of my workshops or keynotes or anything I do is I get us to calculate how many Mondays we have left. So this week I have 1,809. And that is, It sounds so morbid. I hope people aren't clicking off right now, this podcast, because I want us to stick around and say, wait, hang on a sec. It's rooted in this cool concept. I think it's cool, called temporal scarcity. And it's where whenever we recognize something as temporary or limited time only, our perception of its value goes through the roof. And so we all know we're going to die. Like, this ain't news to anybody.
Right.
I hope, unless there are small children listening right now. And if that's the case, sorry, kiddo, you're totally going to expire. And knowing that, though, and reminding ourselves of it, counting it, making it granular, that helps us to appreciate and see our remaining time as more precious. And it helps us to live with more of a sense of urgency and intention and passion. So yeah, 4,000, baby.
Did you ever have, I mean, I know you said you were dying to talk about death, and that was a funny pun, right? But was there any moment in your life or crossroads in your life that made you start thinking about death more and about the days that we have to live and the weeks that we have to live? Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, I think I've always been involved in sort of the self-help fields. So as an executive, I worked in the health club industry, and then I obviously got into coaching and helping leaders be better. And so it's always been about, yay, better your life. And yeah, the juxtaposition of that against this weird absurdity that then we're all going to die. I have always found it amusing and fascinating. But I would say probably the biggest event would be that my mom died when she was 58. And it was less about the grief experience for me. Of course, I grieve her, miss her. Hi, Mom. But it was more about this sort of visceral experience I had when I was cleaning out her apartment after she died, because she had this desk full of manuscripts and business plans and all these artifacts of intentions and dreams that she didn't take action on because she thought she would do it later, or she just didn't have the courage. And I realized, oh, I'm busted, because this is my MO, is I have all these dreams and I'm not taking action on them because I'm scared or I'm delusional and thinking, oh, I'll do it when work's quiet. Yeah, fuck that. It's not going to get quiet. So I realized life is short potentially, but more than that, let's not die with regrets. Let's not die with coulda, shoulda, wouldas stuffed inside of our bodies,
Yeah. Yeah. Mortality can be an incredible motivator, as you said. And in your book, which is called You Only Die Once. Very, very cool. I've seen so many people actually post about your book and say it was an incredible read for them. And I'm working my way through it right now myself. So in your book, you emphasize using mortality as a motivator. How do you help people adopt this perspective without feeling, I guess, maybe overwhelmed or fearful of it, but like taking it on, like you said, as like a motivating thing and a positive and an optimistic thing? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's such a great question and point, because I recognize it's the ultimate turnoff. Okay. So like, even just from a brand perspective and like a business, as I am on stages, it's like, yeah, hire me to talk about the thing no one wants to talk about. You're all going to die. Or like, how do you write a book? Like someone said to me the other day, wow, you only die once. That must have been a hard sell. And I was like, well, actually that was the publisher's idea for the name, which was quite clever. And just two different come-froms in terms of your question. One, even just the foray into it, is that I have learned that I need to lighten it up. Like if I don't add levity to this ultimate heavy question or heavy situation about death, I'm going to lose everybody in an instant. Like, unless someone's like, obviously like a totally morbid person. And I'm sure those people are out there and would just love to be morbid. But this is about, I will doodle the Grim Reaper. I will make all the stupid jokes in the world. I will be irreverent. I will try to make make it just let's just accept the fact that it's coming. And in light of that, what do we want to do about it? So number one, on the tone and the brand and even my colors. I mean, I wear black all the time, but my brand has like the turquoise and the yellow and the bright red and there's
your brand
so
is
it's meant to be
so happy. If anyone's not following Jodi, make sure you go check Jodi out on Instagram. It's such a joy to see you come up on my screen. So absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you. That makes me feel good. So that's just one in terms of like, I feel like I can get us thinking about it and talking about it because it's not threatening or it's less threatening. Right. But then the other thing is like, I'm kind of conscious too. Like I want to normalize that it's normal to be uncomfortable, to think about death. We want to deny it. I talk a lot in the book about just some of the, the background about why we do that. I mean, we're not idiots. Why would we want to sit and think about something that's a bummer unless I can prove otherwise that it's actually helpful? So if you trust that we're going to talk about death and the fact that it is the ultimate deadline, and we all need a deadline to get shit done, right? Like, hello, procrastinators unite. Like we need it. We need to know that there's this time frame where we know that's going to get you busy on the project or busy on living or whatnot. So I talk about it. I refer to it. I give the science behind it in a non-boring way. But then I flip the script fast to talk about living. Because all of this discussion about, sorry, you're going to die, you're finite, is in service of, so how do you want to live while you have your Mondays left? So I want it to be all about the living kind of fast. Like in my keynotes, I'll talk about the death and the regrets for probably like the first quarter for context. And again, doodles. And then it's immediately, all right, how do you want to live wider? How do you want to live deeper? What do you want to do next? How are you going to live in such a way that when you get to the end, you're going to feel proud that you showed up and you killed it?
It makes me think about how, and you talk about this in your book, of course, about like living versus just existing in your life, right? Like actually living in your life and really truly living. You talk about the difference between living and existing quite a bit. What are some common signs that someone who might be listening to this podcast would see if they are just kind of living in that existing mode, right? And how can they break free from that?
Oh, hello. Even when you just said those words, it made me feel that little, like, the sinking feeling you get when you've been a bit busted. Let me just allow me to say, like, I am always my number one client. Like I'm always needing to be reminded to live because I am more of an introvert and homebody and stuff. So like my instinct is to be on the couch, just stay in and be cozy.
Especially right now in cozy blankets. I have a heating pad on me right now.
Oh my gosh. I just came from my other room with a heating pad on my lap. High five to you. I would actually argue that to me is living very well. But living versus going through the motions. So I'm going to use phrases that I think will already make me shudder, like going through the motions. Not participating in life. So I talk about it in the book about, showing up and living versus like living like when we're a wee bit dead inside. And so sometimes we do a thing, recognize this, where you play not to lose versus playing to win. I mean, I get this, I see this all the time with people I used to work with old clients when I used to do one-on-one, but myself, living in such a way that you're not going to take enough of a risk. You want to apply for the job, but you're not going to do it because it would kind of suck if you didn't get it. And it's okay. I'll just kind of fly under the radar and just kind of lay low. But versus playing to win, which is like, I'm going to put my name in the ring, or I'm going to try and open up that side hustle, or I'm going to ask that guy out, or I'm going to get bangs, or I'm going to go and RV around the country. Like I'm going to go for it. And it might be riskier. And so sometimes it has to do with playing to win versus not to lose. Sometimes it has to do with, quite frankly, shaking up our routines. When you get into that motion, when you feel like you're an autopilot and you're like Thursday, it doesn't feel really any different than Tuesday, which was really not different from Wednesday. And we know we're kind of slowly dying inside just through a little bit of boredom because our routines and our habits are comfortable, but then they're getting a little bit smothery. Those are indications sometimes that you might just want to shake it up and, take your routine and go out for breakfast.
Yeah.
Or try something totally different on Saturday morning than you would normally do when normally you're doing the laundry and then you're doing the sweeping and the whatever. Like shaking up, go to a different neighborhood. It doesn't need to take a lot of time or money. And I'm very, very conscious of that. Living the good life doesn't have to mean that you have to have a lot of money to afford it or a lot of time to spend on it. It could just be being more intentional with every increment we have.
I love that. And that's something that what you just addressed was actually part of my next question, which is like,
yeah,
sometimes I know that people are stuck in a situation or in a place of their lives where they're not sure how to even free up more time. They're not sure how to go through life without needing to tolerate whatever is going on in their life to make things work or to keep the peace or whatever. Yeah. How would you suggest people start chipping away at that bit by bit? Like, are there some simple exercises? Like, I just want to be realistic, right? Like like I know that I have a privileged life in some ways because I don't have to take care of little children every day. And I don't have to keep other humans alive. That's like really hard. And I don't envy it. And I also have so much admiration for my friends and family members who are moms, who are parents or dads, or like they all have to keep humans alive. I don't have to do that. So like I can find little bits and pieces of time. I can rearrange my schedule sometimes in a way that other people can't.
Yeah.
Or sometimes people are choosing between having a job that they hate or like having work that they hate and literally having to like feed their family, like there's no way to change that. So when you're stuck in these positions, when you're like, when access is not as readily available to you, how are some ways that you can kind of chip away at that or like start building more into your life?
Yeah, I'm like you too. I wanted everything to be really applicable and real other than just, great fantasy for those people over there. Let's start with the time one. Because time, we can feel time poor regardless of our situation financially or whatnot. And I would love us to look at the choices we make when we even have a beat. So whether it's for the busy mom who gets like, oh gosh, the kid went down for a nap or the kid's down at night. And now all of a sudden, are we making choices sometimes that are the default, which is scrolling maybe through social media or like mindlessly watching a show, which by the way, mindlessly watching a show is like the way I love to live a lot of my life.
That can also be self-care. Right.
Oh, for sure. And until I'm honest too, until it's like that niggling sense that, but there might be a choice I could make right now that might make me feel a little more alive or enjoying myself even a little bit more. So I'm a fan of writing out a list because I don't know about you, but like in the moment, I'm just going to do the sloth thing. But sometimes I need the options on a menu. And so it might mean that for like the busy parent, it's like, it actually might make me feel more soul-filled if I got to even just read like 3/4 of a chapter while my kid was having the nap or right before I fall asleep in bed. But at least I felt like I'm making headway on a novel. And that makes me feel kind of good inside versus just watching Forensic Files and falling asleep. So maybe those are the small, like minor choices to say, what makes me feel alive? It could be for some people, even just having like a rapid fire text exchange with an old friend might be better again than just scrolling mindlessly. And I say scrolling mindlessly because that's easy for us to identify with, but maybe it is about, I've got 12 minutes before my next meeting. I'm going to take a really quick walk to the mailbox and back, and I'm going to take deep breaths and I'm going to have a walking meditation. I'm going to come back in. You can't deny that your life is going to be just a little bit different than it would be if you had just checked and answered 4 more emails in that 12-minute break. So sometimes we just need to get intentional and creative with stop, have your cup of coffee and be there. There's this, and I'm going to always take things back to, death. I have stories about people who have been terminally ill, and they have stories about a gentleman in particular who would take his cup of coffee and he knew he had like a month left to live. And he would look at his mug and he'd appreciate where he got the mug, traveling on a road trip or something. And he would smell the coffee like, wow, like I may only have 29 of these left. And he would taste it and savor it and lean back in his chair and appreciate the softness of the velvet chair he was in and just hang on a sec. Like, I'm not expecting us, by the way, to just be weirdos with our coffee in that way, but I would love for us to maybe take a little piece of that, like the spirit of that, and say, we could be present in a given moment and just look around and appreciate that. Oh, I really like that Mickey Mouse poster. What does that remind me of? And, or go back on your phone and look at photos from 3 years ago from your trip, or like moments that we can actually be very thoughtful about.
Yeah.
Those are options to all of us at any time. And then to your other example about, being in a job where you do feel stuck. Yeah, hi, I get you. And that's very common. So I have just two quick thoughts about it. One is that if your job is just kind of blah, but it's okay, and it's and you need it right now for some sort of financial reason. I'm not advocating everybody just goes and blows up their life and quits their job and gets the divorce that's long overdue, and all of a sudden you're standing at the end of the road like, what do I do now? Not necessarily. But if your job is okay, but not this mecca for you, my first instinct is to say, what if you fill the rest of your life with cool things that might bring you joy? Like go do the pickleball lesson, go take the knitting class, go make sure you're having brunch with your girlfriends on Saturdays like you used to, or go read the murder mystery novel that you've been curious about. Like find ways to be living outside of work so that maybe it takes the pressure off work to be the sense of joy and purpose, the source of it. So that's one option. And then if your job is sort of sucking the soul out of your orifices, then I would actually say, watch yourself for the story you're telling yourself about how, well, this I have to settle. Because when we're settling or when we're overly tolerating, sometimes that is an indication that we're just a little bit scared and complacent. Yeah. And that's okay. Honey bunny, like give yourself a hug. I get you. Go have some ice cream and then let's make a plan. And let's say just like start applying. Again, and sometimes even that little vote, showing yourself, I'm the kind of person who gives a shit. I'm the kind of person who wants to try to make it, to make this situation just a little bit better. And the grass isn't always greener. I know this, but even if it's just not brown over there, maybe it'll give me a new lease on life. And then that might make me springboard to the next job. So I would just encourage us to watch for some of the stuck stories.
Oh, that's good. Stuck stories. I love that. So for someone who might struggle with, I guess, juggling multiple responsibilities or prioritizing what they think are the biggest priorities in their life, how would you help someone best identify their top 3 priorities and like their top 3 things that could like make their life better or make them have a more meaningful life? What would you recommend?
Yeah. My number one thing is always going to be to count your Mondays, because we need that context in order to create that little simmering sense of urgency that, right. And I want it to be just a poke in the ribs, uncomfortable enough to feel like, well, that sort of sucks. And in light of that, then usually there's like a motivational psychology twist that happens gymnastically in our heads. So number one, context setting, time's limited. Number 2, I think, is getting in touch with what it takes to make you feel alive. And many of us are so busy that we have lost the plot on that. And the question is, what makes you feel most alive? Or what are the things that you look forward to doing, or that when you're doing them, they light you up? And then afterwards, when you talk about them, it's undeniable that it's just an energy source. And that's code for flow, the psychological state that we get in when we're in the zone, So are there, and some people, I'll ask people this in workshops, and someone's like, when I'm painting, I'm like, oh, fantastic. When was the last time you painted? And almost without fail, Lauren, it's like a long time ago. Yeah. There are things I love to do. I love to do collages. I haven't done a collage in 2.5 years. I mean, hello, pot color, kettle black over here. Like what, I mean, so
I was just going to ask you, what are your things that make you feel alive?
Writing notes to people in the mail.
Oh, I love that.
Because, it's like the double joy, right? They get it. Yay. They're happy. But quite frankly, it's just super selfish because I feel happy sending it. Even a quick note. Actually, that reminds me, I need to send one today. Thanks for this.
Of course.
The simple joys of spending time with my cat rather than just coexisting. Back to that thing about existing versus living, right? Like actually getting down on the floor and spending quality time with Andy.
Yes.
Cooking, eating.
Yeah.
So I have a whole list of even things like looking through websites at fonts. I love fonts. So that's an example.
I love that.
Where for 5 minutes in between a meeting, I could answer emails or I could look at fonts. I'm still sitting at my desk, but I could be happy or I could be anyway. And then there are bigger things, right? Like the, things that are more take planning or intention, like doing a collage or rock climbing or anything, spent time with my husband. And usually it would involve wine. So what's an example for you? What are things that light you up and just make you feel like you like your life?
Yeah, I actually think a lot of it has to do with quality conversations like this. Like this is where on this podcast is where I feel frequently like I'm in a state of flow. Like all of a sudden an hour goes by and I'm like, oh gosh, I got to wrap this up, and like the conversation you and I had in the hallway at that conference, like that's where I feel like, okay. Or when I get to do that with friends, when I get to do that with family members, and when it feels like nothing is going to like stop the clock, we could just get to talk about things, go deep within things and chat about life.
Yeah.
I think things that give me a meaningful life, I know this is so silly, but like I love like my morning coffee and like I just like that guy, like I literally just like can't wait to just like drink my coffee and look at the artwork on my walls and like look at the plants and water my plants and like just that kind of like I've told my partner, I was like, I know this sounds silly, but like looking at aesthetic things in my own house or like making it look pretty or putting a disco ball in the window so that the light catches it and there's little fluttery lights all over our living room. Like that kind of stuff just like makes me feel so warm and fuzzy inside. And it makes me feel like I have such a cool life, and maybe that's so silly and simple, but I just want people to know this can be so simple. It can be so simple.
This is the best example because I call them cheap and cheerful or the sweet and simple things. And in research, this comes up predominantly. And I love this so much because I think we've duped ourselves into thinking that a life worth living is going to mean, I got to plan it, or it's got to be expensive, or it needs to have time, when it is the beauty of doing what you've done. You've orchestrated something. You chose the disco ball and it delivers joy. And these are just these simple things. We don't even need to explain why they do. They just make us happy. So one thing I want to point out, you just highlighted, like you love looking, like you said, at the artwork on your walls and your plants.
Yeah.
It sounds to me, because, as a former coach, I listen for what are people's values and strengths. And clearly you have what's known in the world of the character strengths as an appreciation for beauty and excellence. And so I would actually encourage people, if you go to viacharacter.org, you can do a free online assessment and it will tell you your character strengths. There are 24 universally studied. It's the most empirically based personality, or not personality, but strengths-based test on the planet, free. And it takes like 10 minutes. And you'll get your top 5 strengths. I bet you one of yours is appreciation of beauty and excellence. And one of the tickets to living this good life we yearn to live before we die is to live a life that honors like where our strengths are. So for example, one of my strengths is in humor and playfulness. And that doesn't mean I'm successfully funny, but it just means it's about being silly and goofy and irreverent. And for my brand, I've come to realize that if that's me and I need to be my voice, the more opportunities I put myself in where I get to do and use that and get to be the goofball that I am in service of my message, that makes me feel alive. Whereas I used to, back in the day when I was like this new leadership executive coach, I was like writing about, in a boring tone, about women's leadership, and I wanted to blow my head off. Well, duh, because I needed it to be funny in my way. Again, I'm not trying to tell you I'm funny. You may disagree, but using your strengths. So I would encourage, if you go to viacharacter.org, take your strengths, and then that's like answers to the test. Be like, how do I live my life so that I get to use creativity? Am I getting to be creative enough? How do I do that more today?
This makes a lot of sense because I love taking, like, I've been told, my reels look like little mini documentaries, or like I love taking pictures of people and making sure they look like really good before I take the picture. And I love looking like I have so much art. That's the one thing that I put in storage. The one thing I took from my house after the divorce, like I took all of my artwork. I was like, there's no chance that any of this artwork is staying here, and I have artwork everywhere. And like, this definitely makes sense. So I'm definitely going to go do that test. I wrote it down for sure. Yeah. And thank you for sharing your own things too with me. I think this is really good stuff. how do you feel like it has been to, you kind of said like, okay, you'd have to speak in your own voice. You have to use that goofiness, that silliness, and by the way, you are funny. I've been laughing this whole interview, but so I'll just validate that for a second.
You're just a kind host, but that's fine.
You use your humor, your silliness, your like bubbliness, right? Within your voice. If someone was just looking at your brand on paper and they were thinking like, oh, this is about death, this is about living your life and like stuff, like they might think like you're very serious, or they might like think you're very like, oh, this is like a serious topic, right? But you've talked about how you're using your brand voice and your playfulness within your brand. I do wonder, like, if you can talk a little bit about how the process of branding yourself and using your voice and staying authentic and true to your voice came through while writing this book, while building this personal brand for yourself, around yourself as an author. Because this, just for anyone listening, this is not like a simple little book. Like, this is a very well-recognized book. Lots of people have read it, hundreds of reviews. I think Adam Grant like wrote the foreword or something. Like, there's like, this is a big book, right? But you also have to like, you had to be true to yourself while writing this book, and not just like succumbing to what people might think you should brand this book as. So can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I get exactly what you're asking. And it's making me think back about the process of starting. So when I started 4,000 Mondays, I was coming out of a business partnership, which was more about that traditional leadership development and coaching. And I had just started writing blog posts there under that brand for leadership. And I was doing my darndest to be like smart, but also, sarcastic in my way.
Yeah.
And I thought I was hitting some notes. I thought I was like doing an okay job. But again, it was like, I really want to talk about the Grim Reaper and, living the good life. That was part of the reason. So I make this shift. So I had a few reps in to be starting to write, but I felt constrained. I knew that. And I was like, unleash the hounds as soon as I started my own thing. Because it was like, well, this is my baby now. I get to say fuck as much as I want. Am I allowed to say that here?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I'm going to say fuck a lot fucking more.
At least what every episode someone drops that F-bomb. So go for it.
Double checking. So I also got clear because I took a couple of little programs. One was like the Marie Forleo B School about who's your ideal customer avatar. So I was super clear. Here are the 3 people that I want to speak to, which is really quite funny to me now because all 3 of them would cringe if I said the F word, but that doesn't matter. I knew I knew my person. And then actually it morphed because I started imagining, do you ever have some friends that you email and you just like your voice, like it's you, it's banter, and you can just have this good like chit chat, right? I started thinking when I was writing for my blog now for 4,000 Mondays, which is all about, living before you die. I was like, I am writing an email to Amanda. And so I had like people in mind that I was like, oh yeah, we're just having this banter that kept me honest, rather than getting in my head like, well, what if a corporate guy reads it and then he like, I want him to hire me for a keynote, but he's going to think I'm an idiot. And like, well, yeah, let him think I'm an idiot because I kind of am a little bit of an idiot. So I was very clear about who's my person, people that I want to, click with. And then the cool part is that I think now, like, I still get self-conscious. Of course, I think I will till I die. I'll be self-conscious in my urn, in my ashes. There'll be very self-conscious ashes, but that's okay. A little bit less every year. And I still kind of wonder, like, am I doing this right? And I'm always tweaking it. But then I'm like, wait a minute. A lot of the people that respond to me in my blog are corporate men who are just like, for some reason, they're touched because they're in their 50s or what, and they're just kind of aware of the finality of time and something. So the funny thing is I'm writing an email to Amanda in my mind every time I write a blog post because I do it every Monday, but it's luckily it's clicking with more than just, that avatar of that one person. But this is a very long route to say, I got reps in writing my blog every Monday. I made myself accountable to that. And so by the time I also did the research through my thesis around this topic of memento mori, I had like the underpinnings, and I also just had now a rhythm of writing in my voice. And so then it was a little bit like, let's just get this shit done. Like, I'm not back to the spirit of like time's ticking. What are you waiting for? Of course I procrastinated it for a little while. I was a little scared. I had a coach friend of mine actually say something fabulously irritating to me right at the start of the new year, 3 years ago, when I said, oh, we were like talking about our New Year's goals. He's like, what are you going to do this year? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to start the book. Oh, he's like, great, asking me questions. And at the time, I was also really fortunate to be preparing for a TEDx talk. And so my whole point was, well, I'm going to do the TEDx and then I'm going to start the book. And he took offense to that because he was like, why can't you do both? And he goes, I don't think you want it bad enough.
Ooh.
And I was so upset because I was like, is he right? And then I was like, no, I'm just busy, but I'm also just kind of scared.
Yeah.
So upon getting the proposal going and getting this thing going, I do feel like I already had experience in writing the way I talk, or at least talking about the topic. And
yeah.
so it felt like, as much as I was reluctant in some instances to reach out to people for blurbs about the topic, it's always about, well, how am I going to position it? How am I going to say, hey, you know, it's might be unconventional or it might be counterintuitive, but I've got this book about how, you know, talking about how finite we are can actually be a cool thing. So I tried to kind of be honest about the fact that, yes, this is a bit unique, but also still in my voice.
Yeah, no, I really love this. And it reminds me of this thing that I share with people when they're first starting with their content. They're like, I don't know how to write this, or they're like using ChatGPT for every single post or whatever it might be. I'm like, okay, well, great. If you need to start there, you need to start there. Okay, let's take that post. And now, if you were saying this exact same thing to your friend at a coffee shop, sipping coffee with each other, chatting, and you said this, and your friend asked you a question, and this is how you responded, like, how would you change it? How would you change it so you're talking to that person that you are completely comfortable and you're completely yourself with? That's what you want to hear online. Is if you think about the people that you follow and like maybe the few influencers that you really like or follow and you actually really dig their content, when they're talking to you, you feel like their best friend. And that's for a reason. It's because they're speaking in their authentic voice and they have nothing to like, there's not, I mean, of course they're sharing only the things they want to share, but as we all do, but they are sharing in their most authentic voice.
I love that. I love how that's the test of like, if you were to say it out loud. You just reminded me for some reason, something you were saying about, I think a stuck part could be when we think that, well, this isn't new, like someone else has done this before. And then of course it flames the imposter phenomenon. Like, well, who am I to be doing this? And like, there is no new idea. I think like, let's just all admit, like we've been around for a long time as humans. And like Nietzsche's been saying all the shit I've been saying. And other people have said it like more eloquently than I ever will. I'm just packaging it differently and it's landing on some people. And also I'm not naive. A lot of people don't like how I have to say what I have to say. And woundingly, they may not even like me, but we won't talk about that. But the point is, even if like, so I have a friend who talks about leadership and she's like, yeah, but my ideas aren't really new. I'm like, well, the way you might use an example could resonate with somebody, or it's your tone, or it's the fact that maybe you are polished in a way that the person that they just read is not, or maybe you're less polished and that's what resonates. It's like just trusting that, like, I guess maybe it's about we stop before we even start because we just talk ourselves out of it. And I would just say, oh my goodness, like it's not, what's the expression? It's a proverb or it's some sort of important way of someone smart worded it, but it's not the message, it's the messenger. So, you know, let's just keep sharing. Let's just keep talking. As long as it's true to your own voice, it'll land on some people. And if it doesn't, well, then we can just get a new job.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So culture, I know you've done a lot of research on this. You did your thesis on this. This is like your whole life. You talk about this all the time. Can you give a little bit of like a quick kind of synopsis about how different like cultural attitudes towards mortality affect the way people fully view the idea of living? Because I think that in the US, we definitely view death a certain way, but like in other cultures, death can be a completely different phenomenon. And, you know, there's like, can you give us a little bit more about how this is, because you mentioned like Nietzsche's been saying this forever. Other cultures have been talking about this for a long time. This is my perspective on it. And this is my voice sharing it with you. And some people will relate and connect to that. So I guess what I'm asking is, throughout time, different people have talked about death and fully living. And I would love to know like your perspective on how different cultures have talked about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting to me, and I'm always learning more about it as I just dig more, and I would say even before cultures, even if we just go back in time, it's a funny thing because back in the day, 200 years ago, people were living till the average age of 35 and death was like literally around the corner.
Yeah,
now it's like,
right.
Bye. Yeah. So it was always life was super short. And there were also, with religion sometimes was trying to curb behavior and like you got to act a certain way to get to the afterlife. And so sometimes there was a little bit of fear mixed in there, but also a little bit of relief with like, oh, I'm going to die any minute now because there isn't sewage invented yet or plumbing invented, but I am at least I'm going to get into heaven or whatever.
Right.
So there's just been like a difference of expectations of expectancy, like length of life. And then over time, there's usually been a little bit of like there's this quote by Virgil, like live, he says, death is coming, like death twitches my ear, live, I'm coming. Always that like, okay, a little bit of a fear tactic. Like it's what I do. It's a little bit of a whip cracking, but I hope again, with a little more fun. So there's always been historically that shitty reality for human beings that we're finite, where they say we're the only animals with that awareness that we're finite. And so we have different ways of grappling with it. Culturally, traditionally, more of the Eastern Buddhist-based faiths, et cetera, have been way more accepting by nature of equanimity. Hey, it's coming. We accept it. We embrace it. We use it to, it's not something to necessarily fear. It's unfortunate, but let's accept it. Sort of that neutral acceptance of everything, the good, the bad, the otherwise. I guess that's what equanimity is defined as. And then the West side of the world, a little more resistant, right? Like we want to control things. We want to, be the masters of our domain. And so with that, unfortunately, a lot of research is clear that when we deny the idea of death, which has happened over time because people used to, again, die sooner, but as we've improved life expectancy and death got whisked away into the hospital, people weren't dying at home, and it became this like, we won't talk about it thing. It's easier to deny, but that doesn't help us because what it does is it usually ratchets up the anxiety because we all know it's coming. Like ask every therapist, usually there's like death anxiety or existential angst is at the root of a lot of our woes. So then we say, well, wait a minute. We like to think that we're above this. We don't want to talk about it or think about it or count our Mondays. But there's a toll that takes. There's an existential psychologist I love who's like, the price of denial, it exacts a toll on our life if we deny the idea of death. So by going there, let's flip this, by actually being willing to say, okay, I know this, but now if I count it and I think about it and I really imagine that I've got, 30 summers left, or I've got 1,809 of this left, or I may have only X number of Thanksgivings left with my dad who is minus, 500 Mondays. How do I want to live my life? And getting more intentional about it. They say that when you participate more in your life, it tends to alleviate death anxiety because you kind of feel like I've done the things. I've crossed stuff off my list. I feel good about it. I didn't get to do everything, but I feel good about it. And therefore, death, I'm not looking forward to you. Please let me go in my sleep, but at least I'm not going to be absolutely white knuckle terrified of you.
Right. This is beautiful and lovely. And I really enjoyed this discussion. I have one last question for you that I ask everybody on this show, or I try to when I remember. But my question would be, if you wanted to bust one myth about death, dying, living, what would you say? What myth kind of swirls around there all the time that you're like, I just wish people would stop saying this, or I really need to set the record straight on this?
Ooh, I would bust the myth that the Grim Reaper is entirely unsavory. I mean, that fucker will kill you in the end, but in the meantime, I think he is the most valuable friend you can carry around with you as that consistent and gentle reminder that you're coming for me. And in light of that, what dream do I need to get on with? What goal do I need to start to pursue? What courage do I need to summon up in order to get on with it so that when you do officially put your little scythe over my neck, that I will feel really proud of the way that I lived my life.
Oof. Okay, we got to end there. That was perfect. Thank you so much for your interview. Thank you for being here with me and sharing all of your wisdom with everyone. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm loving this time with you.
And where can people come and find out more about you? Where would you like for us to send people your way?
Send people to Palm Springs. Come see me.
Okay.
But otherwise, you can come to 4000mondays.com, at 4000 Mondays on Instagram. And yeah, if anybody needs a workshop or speaker for an event, I love nothing more than having fun with a group.
I love it. All right. Thank you so much.
As we wrap things up today, I just want to ask you a few questions. They're simple, but not always easy to ask. What would you shift if you remembered how many Mondays you had left? Have you done the math yet? Where are you postponing joy, waiting for the right time? And what small, meaningful thing could you do today to feel more alive within yourself? I think the part of this podcast that I loved is that Jodi reminded us that acknowledging death isn't morbid. It can actually be quite motivating. It can quiet that existential noise, that kind of dread that pops up, and help us stop sleepwalking through our lives. You don't have to overhaul your whole life tomorrow, but you can choose to stop waiting and start living, even in the small ways. And I know that I need that more than ever right now. I know other folks do too. If this episode sparked something for you, I'd be so deeply grateful if you shared it on social media or left a quick review wherever you listen. Your voice helps others discover the show and the messages that matter most, like this one. And if you have any interest, I am reopening my limited mastermind. The next season starts in August. You can find me at linktree.com/LDavisCreative to download free resources, find out more about that mastermind, or see how we can work together one-on-one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for participating in your own life on this Monday or this Wednesday or whenever day that you found us on this podcast.